Today on Hearts of Heroes, a Category 4 hurricane brings in a historic storm surge.
This is the largest water event I've ever seen.
I told them to be ready when water comes, because it's going to come fast.
As floodwaters rise, a former first responder and his young son will have to brave a brutal storm surge to save their relative in need.
How you holding up? I'm not. At any moment, I could be hit by debris, or the current could take me under. We're looking at 4 feet of water, and I've been swimming forever.
Water is about to be in the house.
I just didn't have a thing in my mind besides I gotta get there.
Will they make it in time?
I could hear her screaming from inside. You think she needs me, I'm not gonna make it. That was terrifying. We'll try to get somewhere safe.
Get out the window!
When friends and family become heroes, it shows all of us what true dedication means. It happens every day. People are going about their daily lives when suddenly a disaster strikes, turning their lives upside down.
And when one of these catastrophic events went down, things could have been much worse had it not been for the brave heroes who showed up to save the day.
It was a really bad storm in the city of Naples area. Nobody knew how bad it was going to be.
I was on the phone with my grandma, and the water was steadily rising.
She's in her wheelchair. The water was up to her chest, almost at her chin. I knew I had to get her out of that water. That's when I started my trek to my mom's house. I saw our cars were underwater and the water was rising. That's when I knew it was going to be pretty rough. Oh my gosh.
Naples, Florida sits on the southwest shore of the Sunshine State, right on the beautiful Gulf of Mexico. The city was given its name because of its resemblance to another seaside city, Naples, Italy.
Naples is very close to the beach. We have some of the best beaches in the continental U.S., and we're also filled with waterways.
We have canals, channels, we have rivers that run through the area.
Johnny Lauder and his family have called Naples, Florida home since the year 2000. This tight-knit family is close in more than one way. Johnny shares a home with his wife and 20-year-old son, Xavier, and then his mother, Karen, and older son, Daniel, are just a stone's throw away.
I'm about 4 blocks from my son's house. My mother lives about a half mile further south from my son's house.
Though his mother is in her 80s and confined to a wheelchair, she is fiercely independent.
My mother is very special. She's a tough girl. Stubbornness, to put it lightly.
Yeah, I am. He's right. Sometimes he tells me something, I don't listen.
When Hurricane Ian hit in 2022, the Lauder family would face a 12-hour ordeal that would change their lives forever. Naples was always expecting a storm surge in the forecast, but as the track kept moving south, the surge predictions doubled.
The eye wall started to push those hurricane-force winds all the way up into the panhandle of Florida.
Aside from the wind and some rain, Hurricane Ian's greatest threat was always going to be storm surge.
When the storm is coming, it's going to suck water away from the eye of that storm. So it took a lot of water down from Naples, and it sucked it out with it before it made landfall.
As the eye passes, now it's pushing it back. So that water that was once there left, it's going to come back, but now it's going to come back with ferocity. It's going to come back with a lot more.
With Hurricane Ian approaching, authorities issued evacuation orders, but some refused to take that threat seriously, including Johnny's mother, Karen.
When she heard the hurricane was coming, she's like, nope, I'm staying. I'm not going anywhere.
One hurricane came through, and I came back. Everything was perfect, except the rug was wet. I thought it'd be like that.
We tried to get Mom to evacuate. She wasn't going to evacuate.
Disregarding an evacuation warning isn't safe. When an expert tells you it's time to get out, you should do so.
We've never seen anything like this.
Johnny was afraid for his mom's safety, so the former first responder decided to ride out the storm, just in case she would need his help.
In the 90s, I was a police officer in North Chicago. I was a SWAT team member. I had rescue diver training, so that is ingrained in me. Since my house is further away from my mom's house, we decided to set up camp here at my son's house.
As Ian made landfall, it pushed that ocean water right onto the land.
We can't drive through this. Back up, back up, back up.
It was early on projected to be roughly 1 foot to 3 feet, suddenly became 3 to 6, 6 to 12, and then, it just continued to get worse as it got closer.
In the city of Naples area, nobody knew how bad it was going to be.
Johnny and his sons kept an eye on the rising water and stayed in constant communication with Karen, who was in a home about a half a mile away.
I was on the phone at the time with my grandma, and then I said, I think I'm gonna have to let you go.
Xavier got up and said, "The water's here."
That's when we gotta get to the attic.
As the family climbed to the highest level of their home, Xavier got back on the phone with his wheelchair-bound grandma. He quickly realized that she was in much greater danger than they were.
She said it's at her belly button, but he was saying that it sounded like the phone was underwater when she was talking. I knew I didn't have much time.
With the streets flowing like rivers, Johnny knew it was going to take everything in him to get to his mother.
When I saw our cars were underwater and the water was rising, that's when I knew it was going to be pretty rough.
Coming up, Johnny puts his life on the line to save his mom.
We have gators and sharks and a lot of other things down here, so I don't want them getting in my way either.
But first, a tip to keep you safe should you ever find yourself in a flood.
A storm surge, flash flooding, or busted pipes can overtake your home in just minutes.
That's why it's important to always have an emergency kit prepared. Pack high-energy foods like granola and jerky, and include a 3-day supply of water. Plan on 1 gallon per person per day.
And each year, make sure your provisions haven't expired. Be prepared. Planning ahead is a lot easier than you think.
When Hurricane Ian hit Naples, Florida in 2022, it brought a storm surge that flooded the city. The water climbed up to 12 feet in some spots. Johnny Lauder was right in the middle of it and had to get to his elderly wheelchair-bound mother who lived blocks away.
First, the water level was at her ankle, and then it was at her calf, and it was getting higher.
It's coming up. It's at the window.
Before leaving, he made sure his own children were safe.
My son, his girlfriend, my youngest son, all piled up into the crawl space. I had to leave, and I jumped out the window and started my trek to my mom's house. When I jumped out the window, I felt the full force of the water all pushing against me.
Johnny would have to fight against really powerful currents to get to her.
So strong that it was taking my feet from under me, and you're just kicking. So you gotta swim, 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 hold on to something. It's probably one of the strongest things I've ever pushed against.
As Johnny fought the surge, the raging water wasn't the only danger.
The storm surge was picking up anything and everything that was in its path. There was fuel, vehicles that got flooded. You had the septic tanks in people's yards as the water was flooding those residential areas.
It's all mixing together, and in some places that water was pretty putrid. Oh my gosh.
Floodwaters can be filled with sewage, toxins, and even dangerous creatures. So you definitely don't want to be submerged in this hazardous mixture.
But this former first responder had no choice but to press on.
I know at any moment I could be hit by debris, or the current could hit me under. I know that we have wildlife.
We had a report of an actual shark swimming in a parking lot.
But there was still another deadly threat.
And I looked up the power lines, and they were all sparking. So it was like 4th of July above me. Well, I'm thinking if I get too close to a line that's in the water, then there's no more me.
Suddenly, Johnny's luck began to change.
I looked up, and there was a boat there. There was a life jacket and a cushion from the boat which floated.
Just then, he got another stroke of good fortune.
When I looked down, there's this knee board in front of me. I don't know where it came from, but I graciously accepted that gift. It made cutting through the water 1,000,000 times easier. We're looking at 4 feet of water, and I've been swimming forever.
Although Johnny had been sending texts, they weren't getting out. His son Xavier kept getting more and more worried.
I was still on the phone with my grandmother the whole time. Time was passing fast. He still hadn't shown up.
I see water coming out of the bathroom. I see water coming through the kitchen door. And I see water coming through the window. I said, the water's coming in.
We're arriving to Grandma's.
After nearly 40 minutes of battling that rushing water, Johnny made it to his mother's house, not knowing what he would find.
I was fighting the whole way there against the Gulf, pushing me back. When I got closer, I could hear her screaming from inside. That was terrifying because I didn't know if something had fallen on her or if she was hurt.
Coming up, with the surge raging, there is no time to lose.
She's up to her chest, almost at her chin, and I knew I had to get her out of that water. It was pretty bad.
After nearly an hour of battling brutal storm surge pushed ashore by Hurricane Ian, former first responder Johnny Lauder had finally made it to his mom's house.
Turns out she was on the phone with my son, and she was yelling at me through the window that we couldn't open the door.
Johnny climbed into the house through a window.
The water was brown, murky, just disgusting, and I knew I had to get her out of that water. She was shaking like a chihuahua, so I knew the onset of hypothermia when I see it. So wrapped her up, put her on a table.
He got me up on the table, and I didn't realize how bad it was outside until I looked out the kitchen window, and I couldn't believe it.
It's now 6:30. She only has one leg, so it's going to be very difficult trying to get out of here.
Johnny couldn't get his mom out by himself, but the surge made it almost impossible for first responders to get to them.
Even though we have all these fire engines and the ladder trucks and so forth, they were useless at the peak of the storm surge.
Johnny called his son Xavier, who began making the long trek just like he had.
It was pretty difficult. I had the same currents going against me, but I just didn't have a thing in my mind going through besides I gotta get there. I gotta get there. I gotta get there. By the time I got there, everything had toppled over. Her refrigerator was lying sideways.
We tried to move couches and everything, but the couches, when they're waterlogged, these things were, it felt like 1,000 pounds.
The water stuck. It smelled like dead fish. And I said, oh no, don't tell me he's gonna go head first down in the water.
We had to try to move as much as we could to get her in her wheelchair outside the door. 6:10, we're now leaving. Pushing a wheelchair, half deep water. Yeah, that's done. We have a little bit of a trek ahead of us, but we'll try to get somewhere safe.
With the threat of hypothermia, Johnny knew they had to get his mom somewhere warm and dry.
Mom's sitting in a chair in her nightgown, soaking wet, so I know she needs to get warm quick.
They made their way to a hotel nearby, but there was no room. The shelter was overrun with victims of the storm, so they rerouted to home base, Johnny's son's house.
He said, how are you holding up? And I said, I'm not. I didn't know how it kept going. I didn't know where I was getting the energy from, but I just knew my grandma had to get to a dry, safe place.
Only a few more miles to go.
Coming up.
We gotta get her to the hospital. We gotta make sure her wounds are okay.
Our fears were right.
But first, another tip to keep you safe if you live in an area prone to storms.
Hurricanes can be devastating to property and possessions, but storms of this magnitude can also knock out critical power sources.
So if you live in an area prone to storms, be sure to have alternative power sources available. Portable generators, backup mobile phone batteries, and hand crank radios are easy to purchase and relatively inexpensive.
Remember, when danger strikes, information matters. Staying cautious and connected will help keep you and those you love safe.
After hours of fighting the storm surge and Hurricane Ian, Johnny Lauder and his son were attempting to get Johnny's mom, Karen, to safety. She was not only suffering from the onset of hypothermia, she had also been sitting in contaminated water for nearly 12 hours. Weary and cold, they finally made it back to Johnny's son's home.
We get back here, she's in her chair. I can't do anything about her wet chair. So we figured we'd put some towels down, put her on a soggy couch. We knew we needed to get her cleaned up.
Now they had to worry about the impacts from that contaminated water.
But she'd been sitting in that water for 12 hours easily. So EMS came out to check on her.
They were like, we gotta get her to the hospital. We gotta get her clean, we gotta make sure her wounds are okay.
They took her to Naples Community Hospital, and our fears were right. She did have some bacterial infections throughout her body. But since then, she's been treated. She's doing better. She's in a rehab facility now.
As the waters receded, the Lauders saw the true extent of Hurricane Ian's destruction.
We made our way back to my mom's house, and then that's when we saw the real aftermath of what things look like. This is my mom's house. Well, what was her house. The water came all the way up to here. You can see the water line against the wall. It was 84 years of her life and things that she's had since the 40s, just taken away in a matter of 12 hours.
It's difficult to see it how it is right now because it used to be where you'd come to just enjoy your day with grandma, play cards. I would do puzzles at the table. It definitely stirs up some emotion.
Sadly, Johnny and Xavier discovered that they had lost their home and most everything they own.
We went the next day, everything destroyed. You saw all your stuff underwater, you saw it all destroyed, and there was a big box of like our family photos and all that, and it hurt to see it.
We lost everything. My mom lost everything. I lost baby pictures of my kids and albums. But, you know, those are up here and in here. And the rest of the stuff, it doesn't matter.
Both Johnny and his mother, Karen, had lost all their possessions. But their family and their fighting spirit had all survived.
Pick up people up, you know, around us, and we move forward. So you can't look back.
We just gotta imagine it was a big reset button, everything's fine at the end of the day, and we're just glad to be here.
Hurricane Ian taught everyone an important lesson.
Mother Nature is a beautiful but cruel and unforgiving woman, and she shouldn't be taken lightly.
Never again will I stay in a hurricane again. I'll go to a shelter, go somewhere with high. I learned my lesson the hard way.
Thankfully, everyone survived the 12-hour ordeal, in part thanks to this family's love and commitment to one another.
I thought they were heroes. I thought they were great, and I'm proud of them.
Not a hero, I'm just a boy who went to go help his mom, you know? That's the only way I can look at it. It's just, you do what you gotta do.
He's my dad. I have to be proud of everything that he does because he's amazing.
Heroes matter, and stories like today's prove just that.
So, the next time you come across a first responder, take a moment and thank them for making a difference each and every day.
And thank you for watching. We'll see you next time, right here on Hearts of Heroes.